Hello, it's Helen from Journal with Purpose and welcome to my latest video. Today I'm going to be making a start on my altered journal, and if you saw my last video, which was my mini Etsy charity shop haul, then you'll know all about it. I haven't made any of these before, however I did buy 2 books from the charity shop and I've had a quick play in this one over the weekend. I knew that this one I had to be careful with because there's already some damage to the spine. But the aim is going to be by the end that we've got hopefully a book that looks something like this, where we've got far less pages in it, because when we start creating in our altered journals we're probably going to be adding a lot of bulk. And I have to say I'm really new to this, so I may well make some mistakes along the way, so I'm not going to class it quite as a tutorial, but hopefully you'll be able to follow along and avoid any mistakes that I make. So for this first step we're just going to need an old hardback book. You'll need some form of glue. I've got my bone folding tool to just try and make sure I can smooth those pages out. And I've also got some emergency washi tape in case anything goes wrong when I'm pulling the pages out. Now, something I have seen from other videos is that ideally you don't want books that are sewn in signatures. Now, both of these do have signatures in them. I couldn't find any where each of the individual pages were glued right into the spine. And a signature is just folded pieces of paper, but that means that if you pull out one side, then obviously the other side's going to fall out. So it just means you need to be really careful when you're deciding which pages to pull out. And that was what I experimented in this one with. And I had a quick play at the front of this one. I've really not done very much. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to leave a few pages clear at the front, because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't kind of tearing out anything that was attached to this inner cover, and I could see that this one was part glued to that. And I then just wanted to leave one more just to make sure that I'm not kind of messing around with that initial structure of the book. And also I know that when I put on my fabric cover, that's going to be covering some of this as well, so I'm going to come back to those pages later. So all I've done for now is just pull out a few, and another reason I did that is I could see that some of the pages at the front of this book were looking a bit loose as well, so I've actually used some of my washi tape to glue just to make sure they're nice and secure. So I'm going to pretend that those were just the normal pages in the front so that we can start together. So you want to then keep your first page that you're going to definitely want and fold it over. And one of the things I did find helpful actually, just to keep them in place, was using a little binder clip there. And then we want to start tearing out some pages. And I've seen people do this with various amounts, anything from about 6 to 14 pages. And I think that depends really on how much bulk you plan on adding to your journals. And you could try and make these really tidy and use a craft knife to cut all the way down. But I don't think we're going to need to, because we're going to be covering these bits up. And one of the person I've seen who's done some really lovely videos on altered journals is Barbara from 49 Dragonflies. So I will definitely leave her channel linked down below. So I've got 2 out so far. And this is where I can see my signatures. So that's what I'm trying to keep an eye on. So I can tear this one out too. And this one then is already loose because of pages that I've torn out, so that's 4. So that's what I'm looking for with the signatures, is if the other half's already gone. Again with this one, it's going to need to come out, or we're going to need to use some washi tape to keep it in. So I've taken out 5 so far. That one is 6. And this one here is actually the other half of this page. So for me that's perfect, and actually also I haven't got anything kind of loose and tatty in the middle. So these 2 pages are then going to be glued together. So you want your 2 pages there, and you could glue these straight together so that you don't get confused, but I've been given a tip on that later, so which is why I'm not going to do it. So these 2 will be glued together, and then this page will be the next one that we keep. So you're always going to have 2 pages then together. It's going to fold that over and start ripping out some more. And we're going to do this same process all the way through. But say depending on what book you've got, you may well need to look at your signatures, how many are included in each one, and then sort of play it from there. I don't know if I'm removing enough pages. It could be that I should be removing almost a whole signature and then just keeping 2 of the pages. But I figure probably even with that I could adjust it later if I needed to and remove some more at a later date. I don't mind my journal having sort of sitting up a little bit when it's full, so if it ends up being a little bit open, I don't want it to be too wide and unusable. And all of these pages that we're tearing out, of course, are going to be perfect for, we might use those to collage in here or use them in our junk journals. So I don't think they're going to be wasted, thankfully. So what I found now here is I'm actually in the middle of a signature. So I want to keep those together, I think. If I go one more, just check. Well, actually, no, I'm going to remove these 2 as well. And then this one is loose, that's fine. And this one is still, just going through to see how many more I've got here. Okay, I'm going to remove those as well. So I would say you need to really look at kind of how your book is made up. So those 2 will then be glued together. And I then need to turn over one more page. And this book, I think it's got 270-ish pages in, 260 maybe. So it should still leave us with quite a lot of nice pages in there to be able to use. One thing I did try and do in my other book, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to do it kind of off camera as well, is there was quite a lot of pictures in there, and I really wanted to keep some of those pages within the journal. So if you've got one with all the pages glued into the spine, then you know you can just pull out as many as you want and you don't have to worry about these signatures. I'm just going to keep going for a moment. Yes, so I'm at the inside of my signature there. And this one's loose. And this one. And again. So then this is where I'm at the other half of this page. So these 2 are already joined together, so I know they'll be nice and strong. So that again is the one that will be glued to this one. Then I need to turn another page over. So we're getting on to halfway through the book, so it doesn't take terribly long. I've wanted to play in an altered journal for the longest time, but everyone that I've watched sort of recommends taking out a different amount of pages, and I was just a bit worried about what might happen. But I figured that I'm not going to know until I give it a go. So, you know, these books were incredibly cheap. I did notice somebody, and I'm so sorry, who said that this is actually one of their favourite books, so I apologise for that. But I think it's actually quite nice with the signatures. With my other one, the signatures were too big, so I couldn't just take out this many pages, but actually means you don't get left with all of the kind of bits in the middle. So not that it matters too much, because you're going to be gluing pages shut anyway. Okay, so that's the other half of that one again. So that will fold over, plus one more. But my plans for this are to kind of use it as a kind of a junk journal, I guess, but perhaps using some printables, photos. I'd also quite like to do a bit of art journaling in here. So I'm gonna get my gesso out to coat some of the pages occasionally to give them a bit more strength, and play around with acrylic paint. And I'm going to try and film as many of those pages that I create as possible, so that once you've got your junk journal to kind of the stage we'll get to at the end of this video, that if you want to kind of look for some ideas of things to put in it, that you can follow along with that as well. And I will talk to you once we've got this bit done about the slow stitching for the cover as well, which is something else new to me. There we go, we're definitely getting there now. But I saw quite a few of you in the comments have already had a go at doing altered books, and some people were saying we're loving them, some people haven't had much success. So I've been asking people for tips wherever possible to try and make sure that things don't go too terribly wrong. But that was what my emergency washi was for that if I didn't get it right with the signatures, at least I knew that I could use some washi tape like I did with those first couple of pages where things weren't quite so strong. And I think if you do that, you just have to be a bit careful with those pages. But I've seen some amazing looking altered books, and whilst it does feel wrong tearing out pages, at least I know that everything I'm tearing out will also be used in some of my other journals, and maybe even some of them end up back in this journal, but perhaps as part of a collage or something like that. So again, turning that page over and then another one. But I spent ages in the charity shop looking for the pages that were glued in individually, but I couldn't find any. So I was trying to find books that weren't too badly damaged along the spine. And this one was really funny actually. If you follow my Instagram stories, I put on there, I don't know if I've ripped that bit out now, but the publishers of this book are David and Charles, who are actually my publishers that I have for both of my books now. So I tagged them in, and they thought that was really funny that I'd found one of their old books and I was about to tear it up and turn it into something else. What we want at the end of this is lots and lots of space so that we can add things that are bulky if we want to, and it's still going to sit nicely inside our journals. Okay, I'm just going to carry on now doing this right up until the end of the book, and then I'll come back to you when we need to start gluing them together. So I've now got right to the end of the book, and again I'm hoping that I've left just that last kind of page there to make sure that I'm not messing around with anything attached to the inside cover. And what we should have now is a book that is, you know, a lot thinner, got a lot less pages in it, but hopefully with the spine still nicely intact. And with this big pile of papers, I'm just going to keep them to one side for now. But one of the things I'm thinking of doing is perhaps, because this isn't actually a particularly old book, is going through perhaps maybe coffee dyeing some of these pages, maybe pre-coating some of them with gesso and things, so I've got a nice pile of papers that I can use in my other journals. So now we've done that bit, which I think is probably the scariest bit, and hopefully our journals are still surviving. So these will be my pages that I'll worry about, but hopefully they'll be fine. So we're now going to start gluing, and I had some brilliant advice from Joy, thank you, one of my YouTube subscribers, who advised not to glue just from front to back because it starts to cause a slope in your spine. You can find that the pages don't sit nicely together, so she recommended alternating between doing a couple at the front and then a couple at the back. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So these two here where we've got the gap, we've gone from page 10 to 23. These are the ones that we're now going to glue together. And I'm just using some Pritt stick. I've seen people use the runny glue, heat guns, so I think hopefully any kind of glue should be all right. And I'm making sure that I'm getting it all around the outside of those pages. And then I'm going to keep the book flat like that, and then actually just pull this one over to try and get it to sit as nicely as I can on that page underneath. And I'm just going to use my bone folding tool, so you could use a ruler or just your hand to try and make sure I haven't got any air bubbles in there. So we've got those two pages together. So we now know it's going to be these two pages to glue, and so I'm not too worried about these little bits in the middle here. Some of them I might be able to rub out, but these are going to be glued together anyway, so we're not going to be able to see any of those kind of tufts of paper in the centre there. And if there's anything too big and bulky, I'd recommend trying to get rid of that, just so it doesn't cause kind of a lump in your page. And again, just gently firming it down by bringing the cover over to make sure that they can hopefully naturally sit on top of each other. So as I've done those two at the front, I'm now going to do a couple at the back. So I know that one underneath is the one I just want to leave spare, so these are the two to glue together. So I'll do two at the back, and then I'll go back and do another two at the front and keep going until we kind of reach the middle of the book, and hopefully they're all done. And I really liked that idea. I wouldn't have thought of kind of making sure that I was doing some from the front and some then from the back to keep the spine in hopefully good shape. And another two there. But I'd love to know if you are going to be taking part and going to be having a go at doing your own altered journal. I saw quite a lot of people on the mini haul video saying that they've also wanted to do one for a long time, but never actually got around to it or were nervous of doing it like me. So I'm hoping if we have a go at creating one together, and we might all be able to share tips with each other as well, with any problems we experience along the way or things that have worked really well. So I'm now going back to the front of the book. They're the last ones I've glued. So I'm going to do another two here at the front. I was having a look through my bookshelves to see if I already had something here that I could use, but I have actually been quite good in the past at taking books to charity shops if I no longer want them, because at the time I didn't have this project in mind. But actually it's still nice to go and have a little wander around the charity shop and see what was there. You find some fascinating old books, I find. In the other one that I had to go at, some of the things just didn't seem to work quite so well when I came to it. So in some of them I've glued 2 or 3 pages together, and I don't think there's a problem in doing that at all. It just, if some of it was looking, just wasn't sitting nicely, or I didn't like the 2 pages that were opposite each other, it was actually more complicated because I was trying to keep some of the floral pictures in there. Okay, so again I'm going to flip to the back. I definitely think it's a sort of project where you don't want to worry too much about trying to get things perfect, because I can already see that my pages aren't 100% lining up where I've glued them together, but I don't think it's going to matter. By the time I cover these pages, as long as they hold well together, and there's nothing stopping you running some washi tape around the edges of the pages. In fact, I think that would look really nice. Okay, we're getting there. But another thing is, I thought that this is something that would take a really long time. I'm not quite sure why I thought that. For how long I've been filming? For 27 minutes. I'll have probably edited out some of me tearing out the pages. But so, in about just over half an hour, we've kind of got the basic structure of the book hopefully done, so that in the next video we can actually play and start creating in our journals. So yeah, we're nearly there, we're nearly at the centre of the book now. And with the covers, I've seen a few different things, and it seems that the kind of easiest one is to create a removable cover, so a bit like a book jacket. So that might well be what I do. I'd had in mind just using the glue gun to stick the fabric to it, but then you've got the issue of what you do when you wrap it around the spine. So I'm still thinking about that one, but I'll show you what I'm up to with that in a minute. Nearly there. But it's definitely what I found with these is you almost can't decide, if you've got signatures, how many pages you want to take out. You need to really work with your book and the size of the signatures. Okay, so these are the last 2 pages to glue together. But yeah, when you start pulling them out, if you've got the signatures, look for the other half of them and pull those out too. I think it's going to be safer than trying to secure them in, but you might well be okay with some washi tape if you're kind of gentle then with the book. Okay, so that's all now glued together. So you should be left with hopefully something that looks a little bit like this. And I'm going to go through, I think, in a moment and just check how all those pages seem to kind of be sitting okay on top of each other. Just look for any bubbles that might have appeared. And then I'm going to leave that at least overnight anyway, just to make sure the glue has completely set, because I've worked before on things like even Pritt stick that's not see a particularly wet glue, it does leave the pages softer, and I found it doesn't always handle other mediums as well, so I don't want to start doing anything in this until I know that that glue is all properly set. Okay, so that is that done. And now I mentioned in the haul video that I was interested in slow stitching, so I'm just going to show you kind of what I've started doing. So this is a little patch of slow stitching that I've started, and Pam, one of my good friends and patrons, messaged me to say that she'd found a really good class on Skillshare about slow stitching, so I will leave a link to that class down below as well. But you're doing, it's visible mending, but it's also, I've seen it kind of explained, I think it was on that class maybe, as embroidery without a plan. So I just had a go at doing some run-in stitches here, and then in different directions I added some little crosses here. For this I did almost like a thumbprint going around in a circle, and I did some blanket stitch on there. So you're just adding lots of little bits, and then probably something else I might consider adding is perhaps something like some ribbon or something over the top of that. And I've done some embroidery before, so I did this one. I got this kit, I can't remember if it's for my for Christmas or my birthday, but what I'd like to do on my cover is actually use some of the things I learned from this. So the little French knots, the leaf shapes, I think it would be really nice to try and bring that onto my journal cover. And on that haul I showed you this vintage slow stitching kit that I got. And what I did then is, with my old kind of neutral fabric, I drew out the shape of the book, but then know that I need to go quite a long way past that. So this is where I'm going to need to work out exactly how I want to cover my book. But for now, I'm just getting some kind of base layers down, treating it like a collage, like I would in my journal. I placed all of these on top and then photographed how I wanted them to look. But say for now, because a lot of these are going to be half hidden, I'm just getting them sewed on for now, so I'm not doing anything complicated. I've used backstitch because I found with doing run-in stitch it's tended to crinkle the fabric a little bit more, and I'm just sewing these patches on because I know a lot of this will be hidden. There'll only be bits peeping through, so I didn't want to spend ages adding embroidery stitches for things that aren't going to be visible. And once I've got those done, then I'll perhaps do some of the actual slow stitching on video. So I can't remember where these all were from the photograph, but say once I've got this kind of bottom layer on, I can then start adding the other bits and adding some of the slow stitching to the bits that I know are definitely going to be visible. So my aim is to work on this cover throughout the life of when I'm working on the altered journal. And hopefully by the end of it, I will have a cover ready to put on, and I'll obviously share with you my process for doing all of that. But I want to add lots of lace, lots of embroidery stitches, buttons, maybe beads, who knows, and just add little bits to make it something really personal as we go through the course of kind of creating in here. So my next altered journal video should be creating on the first pages of here, which I'm really excited about. But I hope you've enjoyed the video and that maybe you're inspired to give it a go too. Thank you for all of the recommendations and tips that people did leave me. As always, a massive thank you to everybody who's joined me on Patreon. I appreciate you so much. Well, thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you're doing really well. I look forward to speaking with you really soon in my next video.